opportunity to learn more about ministry and our hopes and our dreams and our responsibilities for living more fully into God's kingdom. So it is really our pleasure to welcome all of you here for this opportunity. I hope many of you will come back this evening. I'll let Amy talk about logistics if we want to. If you don't want to, just please come back. I will take about 30 seconds to introduce our guest today. Becca Stevens is an Episcopal priest in Nashville, Tennessee. Has done some amazing things in ministry. She has started Thistle Farms in the Magdalene community. I will let her tell you about those. But it is our pleasure to welcome you, Becca, to our midst today, and we look forward to hearing from you. So thank you very much.
So we're going to start off, just so you know, this is the largest tea party we have ever had. We have been in the northeast to the real tea drinkers. We have been out west. We have been in Mexico. We have been suffering with microphones. But we have never had this many people gathered, so we are thrilled. And yesterday afternoon, they sent us a brand new video that just highlights some things in our community of Thistle Farms. So we're going to show you this. We've had to download it online. It's just fresh new. And so I hope it's helpful in illuminating and giving you just like a 3 or 4 minute overview of what we're talking about today. Thank you for having us. This word is, and we welcome you to the circle. So what we want to do is we want to walk you through the tea as a metaphor for a lot of the work that we're doing and the issues around justice we're doing. So for us, what really happened was we opened the Thistle Stock Cafe because so many people were coming to us. When we started the program and said 2 years rent-free for all the women who come in off the streets, the model has been working great. About 82% of the women in the last 10 years who have come through the program graduate 2.5 years later. It's a remarkable statistic given, nationally what happens for people both in recovery from trafficking and addiction. So as people started coming and saying, can you talk to us about it, we knew we wanted to open a cafe because if you're going to invite people in and be hospitable, you need to feed them. So we opened a cafe based on these principles: story, healing, hospitality, and shadow. A lot of this is from the Benedictine model. That's how we are founded. That's how our community understands itself. It's not the new. It is truly the idea that the older you go, the more grounded we get. And Shadow really means the way of tea. And the way of tea is about intentionality. It can be about simplicity and beauty, but it is the idea that in the serving and gifting of tea, there is ritual, there is community, there is equality, there is healing. And that was the space that we wanted to serve out of. And all of you that do outreach work and justice work, that's the spaces you're given mostly. It's like, what does no one else want? And what can you do with almost no resources? And for us, the truth of this journey has been that our work in justice is a non-competitive sport. that we all need each other. And because resources can be thin, we need community to come together. And it's how we see both the love of God manifested in our lives, and it's the way that we understand how to be together. So in 2013, so really right at 2 years ago, we were able to transform that into that space. And what you'll notice is all the teacups. So the first thing we're going to do in our tea party today is notice the teacup that you've been given. I know that some of them come from tea shops, some of them are part of this community, but I would just like you to look at some of them. For us, in the teacups that we collect at the Thistle Stop Cafe, they are all given in honor of a survivor. They're all part of this beautiful idea that each one of us carries a story. There's a story in every cup. And so it's important that we look and honor those stories. And everything at the cafe was done by volunteers. And what we didn't think about at the time, and this just happened a minute ago, is somebody said, I really love what you're doing. I want to figure out how to be a part of it. What happened at the cafe is because we didn't have much money and we had such an awful space, we needed tons of volunteers. And so when we opened our cafe, we probably had 300 loyal customers to start with, because specifically everybody wanted to come in, men and women alike, to the cafe, bring their friends and say, I laid this floor. I helped build that. I painted that. You know, you feel proud. And so you build this loyal customer base just to begin with and start with. The next thing that we wanted to do was really develop, like I said, our own tea ceremony. And to do that, we had to start by looking at the tea leaves that we were using. What is the story in actually the tea leaves? And what we learned, and what you all already know, is that tea has an amazing history, right? It's the oldest cultivated plant in the world. There is one tea plant in the world. It's universal. It's old. You know, there's that old expression for all the tea in China, because all the tea was in China. Even, at the time of the Revolutionary War, where tea became the great symbol of independence and radical nature of who we are as a country, all that tea was from China. Every drop of it. People still didn't know there was one kind of tea that were drinking it in England and anywhere else. They thought there was a green tea and a black tea, not that it was the same tea plant produced differently, because China kept such a close and closed border. So what happened was that England was trading opiates from their colony, India, down to China. People were getting addicted, shipping the tea back to England, and they started having awful boundary issues, marketing issues. The East Indian Tea Company became so powerful, it could wage war and levy taxes. Imagine giving a corporation that power, that you could just wage your own wars. So they had the Opiate War, 1840s. China lost, and pretty soon tea was put into the colonies around. Anywhere that there was a colony, there started being tea plantations. And what's so horrible about that, or what's so tragic about that in many ways, is that's where really the roots of a lot of the trafficking in tea come together. So it begins where tea and the drug trade are really connected, and people were drinking all these teas in these fancy shops, and it was on the back of addiction and poverty and oppression. And it continued to be that way. So as, many places in the world were starting to do fair traded commodities and worry about the well-being of others, tea was mostly left out of that. And there's a lot of information about how still there's a bitter taste of tea, and how, because it is so delicate and the markets are so complicated, you can be a tea picker full-time in like northern Kenya and live in a Rendavel hut on a mud floor and have to go to a charity to beg for a child's uniform. You just wonder, how fair is that trading? And what is it that we can do? So for us, we began connecting this idea of, from the producers of the tea to the drinkers of the tea, that we wanted to offer a beautiful healing tea. We wanted it to be something that was healing. Healing is not a commodity one person has that they give another. Healing is a grace that washes over all of us. And healing is essential to who we are at Thistle Farms. The whole journey was about healing. It started with the idea that if you're going to talk about loving women, you needed to be concerned about their economic well-being. So while we were doing the housing, we started the Bath and Body Care Company, and all the products had to be completely healing. The best products you can imagine. Essential oils from Rwanda, from the survivors of genocide. We wanted to have, beautiful bath salts that you could heal in as you were contemplating and being together. So we wanted to be able to serve a healing tea, again, so that it's not just healing in theory, but in practice, that what we drink and what we serve and how we're together becomes beautifully healing. So the first thing that we did was last summer. It started last summer. And we said, oh, I know, all we need to do is start our own tea company. How hard can that be? It's so hard. I'm just going to say it is so much harder than anything that we've ever done. And we decided that we were going to spend this year trying to figure out if we could have an economic impact on some of those issues and not only provide the best healing teas that we could provide people, but that we could develop these healing rituals. And we could know every single person that was growing that tea and how it was healing in her life. So I went to Uganda last summer. That is Gideon Bayamagushi. He is an Anglican priest there, and he and I met at Sewanee when he was teaching up there for a semester, the semester before. And, as Gideon and I were talking down those, some of y'all been to Uganda before? It's unbelievably bumpy roads, so it's really, really hard to have a conversation. You're like, one thing about Jesus, and you just bumping along. But we were sharing our stories, and we were talking about what it means for us to really be advocates for women, women's freedom, women's healing, and what that looks like. And Canon Gideon told the story of when he was in seminary and he found out he was HIV positive 23 years ago. And how the dean of his seminary said to him, don't tell anybody. If you tell people, because at that point, especially in Uganda, Rwanda, Botswana, it was a death sentence. To say you were HIV positive 23 years ago, it was a death sentence. Nobody was surviving it. So his dean said, don't tell anybody. And he said, please know that I'm not telling you this because I'm not telling people. I'm telling you this because somehow it's going to be good news. And I shared with him some of my story of when I was young, and my father, who was an Episcopal priest that moved south from New York with my mother and 4 siblings. My mom was 35. She had 5 children. They came south, and he was killed by a drunk driver that year. And within that calendar year, the guy that was the senior warden in our church began sexually abusing me in the church and did that for a few years. And how in my life and in my healing and in my journey, when I started working with the women at Magdalene and Thistle Farms, that I needed to go back and talk to my abuser. And like his divinity school professor, when I told my abuser and his family what had happened to me, his first question was, who have you told? It was the number one scary question, right? I don't want people to know this. And I said to him, I was like, I got really, really bad news for you. I've told a lot of people. And I plan on making it good news. I plan on this being part of the good news of the story. For all of us, we speak our truth. We do these acts of justice. We do this work of advocacy, and we tell it because not only is it good news, we don't know who's listening. We don't know who needs to hear that story and to be encouraged and to be about it. And Gideon has told his story all over the world. He has won the equivalent of the Nobel Prize in Japan. It was given $750,000. And he said, I'm starting a university and you're going to help me brand it. We're going to call it Hope University, and we're going to make tea. Perfect. So we started a tea company. That's the very first meeting of the tea company. I took that picture on a cell phone. And that's how a lot of these ideas start, isn't it? Sitting around a table with some friends and dreaming up how we can do it. My husband's sitting on the far end. He's a country music writer. He says, I got a jingle for you. These are 2 women farmers who said we can do this. We got people that were going to do branding, and we started selling them. The next thing that happened, there's the branding of it, and there's the tea now. Isn't that beautiful? It's really fun. So the next thing that happened is we were saying, okay, so now what we have to do is develop a market, right? So you have this sense of justice. You test those ideas out in the marketplace, and then you have to have a chain. And what's happened for us is that we realize the less number of links that you have in the chain, the better off the producers do. Do you see what I'm saying? In the market, in the value market chain, what happens is people have great ideas and they do stuff, but the producers get lost in that. So if we can really link consumers and producers together, these folks are really going to be lifted up out of poverty, and they're going to make decent money. And we're going to be that chain, and we're going to be the distributors, and we're not going to charge anything. So we started other tea companies. We were working with a couple other tea companies. One of them that you are going to be working with the tea today, if you haven't already had it, is I'm serious. I'm gonna watch y'all the whole time. I'm acting like I'm talking to all these people. 5 social enterprises, 1,000 women around the globe, and we have started an actual chain. It's a global company, and people get confused by global, and what global means is that you have several local companies tied together. That really it is the local direct service, that in this work, what we are about is loving the whole world one person at a time. That's how people experience healing. It's not in huge proclamations. It is not by amazing legislation. People are healing in individual love. And that these universal issues can be dealt with directly and locally. As more and more of us come together, it has an impact. So we have 5 teas. We started tea kits. We had the women in Luwala, Kenya, sewing and designing tea kits that people could take around. We made our own thistle blend, obviously. And we have just sold, I don't know, maybe 3,000 or 4,000 kits now, and it's been about 8 months. For us, that's good. I mean, there was a day when we had an idea like to sell a candle, and we sold 300 the whole first year. And so what we know we're about is that we are about a justice tea movement, and we are happy to serve it 1 cup of tea at a time. And the idea of being in your midst and sharing 225 cups of tea at one time, it's never happened for us. If you are a social media person, for the love of God, take a picture of yourself drinking this tea. The next group was a group of women in Mexico called the Moringa Madres. And so the tea that you have in front of you, and I would love for you to pass it around, is actually mostly moringa. Do you see that bowl of tea in front of you? If you pass it around and smell it, what you're smelling is lemongrass, black tea from Africa, and moringa from Mexico. All 5 women were homeless with their children, all victims of sexual violence. They were at a feeding program, and when they heard that we were having a justice tea movement, they said, we can do something. And they had one organizer, and they said, what we can do is we can grow moringa. Now, if any of you listened to NPR 3 days ago, there was a huge story on moringa is the new superfood. I'm serious. We were ahead of that curve, crazy enough. And if you want to be on the cutting edge of healing and holistic stuff and you want to throw a fancy word out, moringa is your word. Moringa. Moringa. So the 5 women got together. You don't have to keep showing it. I just keep pointing. I just do that randomly. They got together and they said, what we're going to do, if we know that you can guarantee you're going to buy X number of kilos of moringa a month, and you got to know that my 19-year-old son received the first package at our house. 2 kilos of moringa were delivered through the mail at my house. He was so worried. I was like, honey, that's moringa, I promise. Like, nothing, I haven't turned on you. Mom? I was like, I've been under a lot of stress. So, they said, if you can order this many kilos, we'll start delivering it and we'll start doing this. Whole Foods went crazy. Went crazy. Whole Foods says, put this in a bath salt. Now we have an exclusive deal with Whole Foods in more than 120 Whole Foods stores. And they sell Moringa bath salts. We're the only people that sell it. And it's called the Muscle Soak. I think there's like 8 bags of it out here. But it is beautiful. And so we said, you can imagine now, these are 5 women who have been homeless with their children, growing moringa. We said, you have to double the amount of moringa you're sending us. This is after maybe 4.5 months. So they go out and they buy more land and they plant 80 more trees. And so I was there about 6 weeks ago. I went there and I brought a press. Not only can you drink moringa, can you play with moringa, soak in it, just put it all on your face. It's got amazing properties, including wrinkle reduction. And I'm like, 10 years ago, where was it? So I brought down a press so you can press it and you can have oil and you can just rub it on you. And so I said to the women that were the Moringa Madres, I was like, you don't have any idea what you've done. These are, for many, I think 4 out of the 5 women, the very first paycheck they ever had in their whole lives. These are women who have begged, borrowed, stolen, been raped. They are getting a paycheck. They are having their children. They are not living under a tarp on dirt. And you're growing a company, and it's going really well, and it's high quality. What do you want to do with this? How do you want to establish this company? So the women went around and talked about their big goals and their dreams. The last woman that spoke was Maria. She's 78 years old. And she has been on the streets in Ajijic, Mexico her whole life. She has an apartment. She has started work with this company now. And she says to me, what I would really like is to go out to lunch again. She had never been out to lunch before. And in her life, she would like to go out to lunch one more time. And I'm like, I'm so there with you. It's a beautiful thing to gather and have lunch, right? And to have this chance and this joy. So that's the Moringa Madre blend that you're drinking. And so you're invited in this richness and in this time together to put into your own tea bag a tiny teaspoon of the moringa. Do you know how to do that? Not the water. All you're doing is putting a tiny teaspoon of moringa in the tea bag and laying the tea bag in your cup. The way it works with tea is that you don't serve yourself tea. It's just like communion. You know how you don't take communion, you receive communion? The very best place of honor in a tea service is the one who gets to serve. That is the place of honor. And so what we're going to do is pour each other's tea. You're not going to pour your own tea. So when you get the tea bag in the teacup, then pour the water for someone else.
Here we go. She needs this, right?
Mm-hmm. So if everybody has their teacup and their tea beginning to steep, this is the part where I would like to call you into silence. This is the part where I would like you to look around and see the richness around us. To take in the aroma of that tea and imagine the women in Africa, the women in Mexico, who gave their time and energy for your enjoyment. The Marias of this world that want you to enjoy your lunch. And because we are a loving and compassionate community, what usually happens is for all of us at these times of tea is we remember those we wish we were drinking tea with. Whether it was someone that gave us the gift of tea, or someone that you know that could use a really beautiful cup of tea. And to call those people into this space silently. And imagine that that is our cloud of witness as we share this tea. And as you sip your first bits of this tea, I would love for you to give thanks for all the gifts in your own life, for all the mercy that you have been shown. And maybe to offer a prayer of petition. And surely part of what we are doing is trying to cultivate on your palate a sense of what justice looks like. Can you taste hope yet? We didn't put any sugar, we didn't put any lemon, we didn't put any milk out there. Because this is not about whether you like this tea or not. It is about what can you appreciate in this tea and how can it help heal you. We are all in this work together, all about healing one another. So as you enjoy your cup of tea, I want to introduce to you one of my heroes, Regina, who was one of the first women that came into the program almost 20 years ago. Regina, like many of the women who share pretty much trauma in their youth and hit the streets pretty early. When I met her, she was so beaten, she still had like a boot on her leg. And she, like I said, was one of the first 5 residents, and my job was to go by and make sure everybody was okay and check on everybody on that first house. And one night I went by the house about 3 weeks into it, and I look in the window, and Regina's just like, but dancing well. And I was like, why is she dancing? Like, this is a recovery house. And I went and I came in the house and I said, Regina, what are you doing? And she said, I'm having a Holy Ghost party. And we laughed and we talked about it, and I went out to my car and I wept like I have never wept before. And I think part of it was seeing the tenderness in Regina, who had been broken and beaten for a long time, that she could still dance. I think part of it was realizing the enormity of the work I was getting myself into, and that this was going to cost me quite a bit for my life, to think about getting into human trafficking and human exploitation and wanting to make an impact on some women. But I also think I cried because I couldn't remember the last time the Holy Spirit had moved me to dance. And I wanted to learn how to live like that, with all my broken pieces and my brokenness. And very rarely do I get to travel with Regina. She is out on the streets. She's probably helped 150 women come off. And to have her with us today is a huge honor for me, and I would like to cede the stage to you.
I want to talk about Can y'all hear me? Yes. Okay. I want to just talk about a little bit, really quick, what this healing has meant for me. It's like after years of walking around on the streets thinking that at the beginning that I was partying, having a good time, and then to finally lose everything, including myself. I have 3 sons that I lost and couldn't find a way out of the destruction, of the prostitution, of the drug addiction, ending up in places and in and out of prisons for over 18 years. And finally, the last year, 1996, there was an answer. There was a gift given, a way out. And that gift came from Becca Stevens. God had touched her heart to prepare something for women like myself. And coming out of that destructive lifestyle and coming to a red carpet, and this is exactly what that looks like to me. A red carpet welcoming me back to me, welcoming me back home. And then even though society says you can't work a job, you may have the skills, you may have went through some schooling, you may have had a job even, and they're saying no to me, then God touching this gift to me again, saying, okay, we're going to create a job, and we're going to have people to come and help us do this, because you don't have to do anything alone again, Regina. We're going to walk with you, and to say that, no, society says that I'm the scum of the earth, and that whatever happened to me out there, the rapes, whatever happened to me, I deserve that. And for her to say, no, we're going to walk with you. And then to create a job, after the graduation of the program, I get to come back and watch women like myself come in the greatest gift, to not know if this is going to work for them, but to say to them what she said to me, we're going to walk with you, and the healing begins. And then to be able to sit and drink tea, something as simple as tea, that we never even knew about, that had healing agents. Not only do we make bath and body products that heals our bodies, we're able to drink and consume something that heals our bodies and bring us back to healing. Brought me back to finding myself again. And I can say today that I am Regina Mullins. I have found my way home. And because of that, I stand before you with 19 and a half years clean from prostitution, drug addiction, and everything that had consumed me. And now I'm able to be as my gift, the gift that was given to me, I'm able to give the gift to others. And you guys, thank y'all.
Do y'all like that tea? Have you tasted it? Can you taste a little bit of the lemon balm in it? Can you taste a little bit of the dirt of Africa? You can, can't you? Just like if you start tasting it, it's got very earthy taste to it to me. My hope, and I think in my life as a minister and as somebody in the community, many times committee work is where the spirit goes to die. I know not everybody's Episcopalian here. You can say amen. You get a really good idea and you bring it back to a group of people and you sit in a windowless room and people start talking budgets and they start getting undone by everything, and pretty soon it's like, forget it. You do it. Or let's do it the simplest way and not make it complicated. What we found is when we bring ritual into that and make it almost a service, that it can be a place that you can really get new inspiration and we can have communal visions. And the tea has been a great part of that. You should all bring tea to your next committee meeting. I don't care if it's budget. I don't care if it's pastoral care, outreach, pour each other a glass of tea. Tell a story about what's actually happening in your life. And watch the Spirit move and come back into this space. That's why tea is the second most popular beverage after water in the world. Did y'all think it was coffee? That's true. Second most popular beverage in the world after coffee. Huh? I mean, after water. Coffee's next. I'm sure beer is number 4. I think personally it goes water, tea, coffee, beer, if I had to bet. Huh? Yes. So, bringing the idea of ritual into our daily lives is one of the great tasks of healing. And when we say healing, we are really talking about not a miracle cure, although I think Moringa can cure most things. No. But it's an intentional walk towards wholeness, that you and I are making this intentional walk towards wholeness. Now, the truth is, in our work and in my life, one of my favorite things is getting to travel with the women of Magdalene and Thistle Farms. The Episcopal Church nationally has really been the lead on a housing first model for survivors. Where we are currently is we have 22 sister communities in the United States. We have 19 partnerships globally. And we are growing exponentially. At the end of 2014 fiscal year, which is June 2014, we had sold $1 million worth of bath and body care products. At the end of the fiscal year this year, July of this year, we had sold 1.6 million. That's a 60% growth in a company. Last year, we were able to pay into the pockets of women who were formerly imprisoned, formerly on the streets, women who knew the underside of bridges, the inside of prison walls, the backside of anger, and my God, the short side of justice for way too long. Last year, into those pockets, we put more than $500,000 in wages back in those pockets. What that translates into is more than $750,000 in savings and real income for the city that we're in. We don't take any federal or state funding. We gift back to the city $750,000 a year in what we do. And that's including tax revenue, court restitution costs. That includes getting children out of DCS. What Regina didn't say is she did an amazing job raising those boys. You got all those boys back, and you were awesome. And those boys, as beautiful and troubling as they are, have grown up to be amazing men, or close to men. One of them's still pretty young. All that translates, and so it becomes this space where we can see healing and economics and justice and evangelism, social enterprise, all coming together in the word community. And somehow you and I drinking a cup of tea helps all that come to life. There's this whole thing when Jesus is talking to his disciples over and over, he tries to make it so simple. They call the disciples of Mark the original Marx brothers because they never get it right. And he says, okay, give a cup of water. Can you do that? Welcome a child. Can you do that? Walk behind me. Can you do that much? And most of the time, I don't know about you, but I say, not yet. Almost, but not yet. Those are hard things to do when you think about how thirsty the world is, or how many children are left outside the circle. It becomes overwhelming. But when we come together and we all share that calling and that joy, it becomes possible. And somehow it becomes possible in this great miracle that we call love, That you can drink a cup of tea and imagine that you are in fact helping heal a woman in Mexico. That's crazy. And it's so true. It is so true. So going around the country talking about things, one of my favorite women to travel with, besides Anika, of course, who is going to be talking tonight, is a woman named Doris, who you saw in that video, who said, I walked a 20-block radius for 18 years. And most of the women we serve are between 18 and 50 years old. We have about 100 women on the waiting list. We have women who recently, the referrals came from women who were trying to escape a pimp in North Carolina, who were stuffed in a trunk on the way to Texas, who were being let out of a jail in Arkansas, who were trying to find a place from Atlanta to go. They're coming from all over the country. And Doris goes and tells communities, you do not have to be overwhelmed, and we can have this network of housing, and we can help each other. And Doris, who is so full of joy, who witnessed the death of her father on her, and still has a laughter that is contagious. Her laughter is so contagious, and most of the women I travel with have never flown before. But when Doris flew for the very first time, and I'm getting to the end of this, she was laughing so hard going down the runway when the plane started taking off, like roaring laughing, that the flight attendant got on the microphone and said, as soon as we're 10,000 feet in the air, the first drink is on me. I was like, no, that's a horrible idea. But I, as her pastor, will take that free drink. We went to Pensacola, Florida, and she had seen so much of the world that I had never seen. But she had never seen the sunrise or the ocean. Standing on the shore and seeing one of those hopeful sunrises. And this woman that is such full of joy and love and music and hope, you can imagine what she was like on that shore. I got to be with her when her feet first hit those sugar sands. And we walked out, and when she felt the tide for the first time in her life, she just stretched her arms back and lifted her head and said in this beautiful, lilting voice, has this been doing this my whole life? As long as she was wandering around those streets for all those years, trapped in a prison of shame and addiction and fear and poverty and loneliness, that tide was going in and out. As long as the moon has been spinning around this earth, that tide has been going out. But deeper and older and more powerful than that tide is love. It is so powerful. It is so powerful that it can heal us all. That we can all share a cup of tea and we can all share in hope. We have done amazing work in this community, and tons of people have been about this communal vision, but we have tons more to do. We have so much work to do. People ask me sometimes, do you get burnt out? And I'm like, when? Why in God's name would you burn out when you can drink fancy tea and be with a beautiful community of people and hope together? Why would you not think of another thing to do? We can do more. We can share tea. We can tell our stories. We can help with local movements happening right in our midst. We can continue this journey together of healing. We are grateful to be here. I pray that you taste this tea and let it sink into your heart. And that any place that you still feel cynical about this world, or say to yourself, women don't change, or anytime you think that's too big and I'm too little, or anytime you wonder, can I make a difference? You taste that tea that's residing in your heart and you say, my God, yes. And so that someday, when our Lord asks us, can you welcome a child? Can you welcome a child that has been beaten and forgotten? Can you give a cup of water? We can say, yes, my Lord, we can. Thank you. Oh my God, they're going to love me so much at Thistle Farms. I love y'all. So what we want to do at least is we want to have this next 10, 15 minutes together. Refill your cups. We can have some Q&A so that you have questions. We are happy to answer it. And Harrison, thank you so much for everything and welcoming us. We are grateful. So anybody have any thoughts or questions that we can answer in the next 10 minutes? Yes. So,
can you tell us about the sister organizations and what they do?
sure. Sister organizations are housing first programs that are 501c3s. They're called whatever they're called in their community. Some of them are called Magdalene. There's an Eden House in New Orleans from Trinity Church. The cathedral out of St. Louis is called Magdalene. There's Raise My Head Foundation that we just helped open 2 weeks ago in Wichita, Kansas. There's a program. There's 2 programs in Northwest Arkansas. There's a program in Kerrville, Texas. I can't think of all of them right off the top of my head, but it's basically the idea that it's 2 years rent-free and no authority lives in the house. And what we do is we do education days once a month at Thistle Farms. We shut everything down. And we teach people what the model looks like both on the housing piece and on the social enterprise piece. And we cap those at 60 people. So 60 people spend the day going around the company and going to the various houses so they can learn about the model. And then we have follow-up so that we can give, everything we've been given is a gift. You can imagine what we've learned from so many people. So we gift everything back. Like if we have a form that you want to use, if we have anything, we are happy to share financials, grant, language, anything. We would share it. Yes? Let's thank our lovely Tim Fudge. He organizes all our trips and did all the AV stuff. He does a million things, but especially for running the mic around. Thank you, Tim.
I'm a professional counselor, and I just was curious to know if in your environments they bring in professional counselors,
Yes.
or is it all lay ministering to
No,
each other?
no. The way that we work is that what we are is a community. She's asking what's the role of like social workers, therapists, counselors, psychiatrists, how does that work? So we are a community of women. It's an old school model. In other words, we're the home. You come in and you get a key. And if the 3 of you guys were going to live together, you would each have a key and you would each make a plan for what these next 2 years that is a gift to you is going to look like. What are your goals? You'll go get assessments for your health, for your education. Most of the women start at the dentist. Everybody goes to the Rape and Sexual Assault Center. I haven't met a woman in 20 years coming off the streets of Nashville who has not been raped, or anywhere in the country, truly. You just don't see it. So you're talking about 100% traumatized women, and that's what Doris said in the beginning of this movie was, people don't come in and we say, what's wrong with you? We say, what happened to you? The reason 2 years is significant is precisely because of what you're saying. You need to develop a personal relationship with a really good therapist. We're going back really, really far for people. We're not going back to when you were 14 years old and you ran away and got picked up by a truck driver and that's when your journey of trafficking began. We're starting at 4 years old with your grandfather. And how does that look, and where does that build, and what are the triggers? But there's many forms of therapy that women use, whether it's EMDR, whether it's group therapy, whether it's trauma-based, informed therapy. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that happens, and we have an excellent group of people who are both working inside the community of Thistle Farms, but also every individual therapist a woman has works outside the community. We contract and we pay for that, but you need to be able to go complain. Otherwise, it's like going to your mother for therapy. I can't imagine anything worse. You want to go to a therapist and say, you're not going to believe what my mother did. Like that. Anyway. Yeah.
Get people into your program. I mean, do you go recruit people on the street or what?
No, the problem is that there's so many people that want to come into the program. Our very first national story was in 2011 with NPR. They did a 4-part series on Thistle Farms in Magdalene. The next national thing that happened was a prison tour that was paid for by Dollar General, and we went into 10 women's prisons around the country. And with story and with personal testimonies, we started sharing what it looks like for a woman to find her way home in community. Both those things, the NPR story more than anything else led to everybody who had a cousin, sisters, brothers, aunts, nephews, friend, that had been on the streets and had been a runaway or whatever, they started calling. And it has been overwhelming, and part of the reason our strategy is so specifically around starting communities around the country is that we need referral networks and mechanisms. The nature of trafficking is it's not local. You are trafficked, so you're in many, many cities. Anika came from Detroit. We have women from every state almost who have come through there. We have calls from Alaska and Hawaii, can you take somebody? Isn't that awful? So for us, we've quit doing hardly any outreach. We say no all the time. And like I said, there's more than 100 women on the waiting list today. So when we started inside the prison, one of the things that happened was we said we're going to invite 6 women from inside the prison to come directly to us that meet the criteria of criminal trafficking, prostitution, addiction. That was the only thing. 50 women came the first night, all qualified, all wanted to come. So what we did is we walked into prison and said no to 44 women. And it's like, God, you can't do this work and not be heartbroken by that stuff. And so all you can do is say, I'll be back. I'm going to come back and we'll do it again. I'm going to come back and we'll do it again. So we have time for 2 more questions. So if you want to make this a positive comment along with your questions so we all feel really good and not sad at the end.
This is a victory report. It just so happened I was watching the news last night, and I don't normally watch the news because I like to go to bed happy. I don't like to go to bed sad and depressed. Well, I was watching the news last night, and they arrested a gentleman in the Greenville area for trying to traffic a 14-year-old girl who was at his house with his daughter. They were just having lunch or something, and apparently he tried to kidnap her, but they arrested him yesterday at a local gas station.
The reports if you look at some of the human trafficking reports in our country, more than 100,000 young women are vulnerable to trafficking a year. That's vulnerable to trafficking, meaning runaways or people who have severe sexual trauma in their youth. They have had, since 2008, 27,000 reported cases of trafficking domestically in the U.S. It's unbelievable, and that is good news, and we have so much more work. And part of our work, just so you know, is we are all about advocacy. We're all about prevention. We're all about going upstream and helping our next generation say, not only are we responsible for telling our story and making sure young women are safe and making sure our communities are safe. We are responsible for holding people accountable and outing people so that you can't, part of the reason you traffic children versus drugs, let's say, is that you can sell a drug once, you can sell a child 1,000 times. The other thing is true is that if you can traffic one child, you can traffic 500. If you can rape one child, you can rape a lot of children and do a lot of harm. And the sooner we intervene and hold people accountable, the better and healthier our whole communities are. We are of the belief at Thistle Farms that when you rape the women, you kill the village. That everything falls apart. The families fall apart. The education systems fall apart. But when you heal the women, you are healing the whole village. The education systems, the children's, the churches, and everybody. It is a beautiful thing. Last question.
I'd like to know your greatest needs and how we can pray for you.
That may be the same question. That's probably the greatest need is for us to pray for one another. I love that. And I am of the belief, I'm going to give you an example. When we opened one of our houses in 2005, we built $1 million home for 8 women. And it seemed very, very lavish and unbelievable, but we wanted a piece that felt like the lavish nature of the love of God for us and how we could offer it in a really inspiring and organ fundraising kind of way. Like, you raise $1 million for an organ. We wanted this to be like an organ, this beautiful cathedral-like for women. And, women came in, and it ends up now, this house costs less than half of what it costs to house a woman in prison. That you can be both lavish and economical. We open the house, right? First day, and we're all about protecting the women. Woman comes off the street, Cynthia Marlowe, and she comes in, and you're not supposed to talk, meet the public at the beginning. You're in this fragile space. And I walk into the housewarming for this new house. She's just off the streets. And she's out front just passing out the flyers going, hello, welcome to the home. Hello, welcome to the home. I'm like, I don't think you're supposed to be doing that. Are you okay doing that? Are you sure? And she goes, listen, I prayed for this house. And at first I was like, wasn't that lucky for you? Because I built the whole damn thing. I'd much rather been the one praying versus having to go raise the money and build it. And then I was like, you are brilliant. I always thought I was praying for you. I'm the answer. I finally heard your prayer. And I started thinking about that. Can you imagine all the Syrian refugees and all those prayers? And maybe our reaction isn't just us praying for them. Those prayers coming across and what that must be like to have your children there and all the prayers you must put out. And that we have to be receptive to the prayer. Cynthia taught me so much about if I can just be receptive to the prayers offered in addition to praying for others. That those beautiful longing prayers already out there that I need to hear. So yes, pray for us. That is a huge need. But listen to the prayers others are praying and longing for too, and be opening to hearing and responding and being the answer to prayer. That is another huge need, that you're the answer to a prayer. Another need that we have is that we want to stay in contact with you. We want to grow this movement. We want you to have Thistle Farms soaps in your bathrooms, not just at your house, at your businesses, in your restaurants, in your churches. Bathrooms are the very last place people still read. We've gotten interns because there's bath products in the bathroom, like a professor, and she put a bath product in there, and a student read it and realized, that speaks to me. I've always been a wannabe about women's justice and freedom. I'm going to get in touch with them. Or I'm always interested in marketing and enterprise. So we want you to use the products. We want you to share the story, but we want you to do all your Christmas shopping. It is now officially our season, because it is less than 100 days. And if you did your Christmas shopping, can you imagine how easy the whole season's going to be for you while others are stressing out and you're going like, I'm probably going to go get a pedi. The other thing, though, is we want to be friends, truly, and we do pray for each other, but also that we can call on each other. If you say, there's this program here, they need this help, we want to be there for you. We want a network and a connection to go on. You know, come visit us. When you come to Nashville, come to the Thistle Stop Cafe. Find out, and don't be afraid of hearing someone's story that you can hear in a beautiful way. And please, like I said, that's the most beautiful question you can end with. Pray for us. We have so much more work to do. This has been huge. You've already done stuff. You don't have to even feel guilty. You can feel good about yourselves. Seriously, y'all have done such a beautiful thing. I cannot believe this, Amy, truly. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And let's just love each other. Amy, you have an announcement?
Thank you, Becca, too. There it goes. Thank you, Becca, too. I think you're an answer to our prayer for coming, and all of these people for answered our prayers by being here today to hear your ministry and to help go out and share that as well. We do have some announcements in addition to saying thank you to everyone that came. We have a set of Toyota keys. These are not them. They look like this, that have been lost. Please see me if you found them in your pocket. And also tonight is open tickets. Please come back. Please tell a friend. We have $8 student tickets. You do not need to call me. I'm not going to answer my phone today. So please bring a friend back tonight. Tonight is the ECW Wine and Cheese Social from 5 to 6:30, and Becca will present again at 6:30. It's a different program. Thank y'all very much.